Some people cannot simply turn off their minds. Even while lying down, even in silence, they continue thinking about everything, about what was said, about what could have been done, about what might happen. If you are like this, you may not know it, but this is not a flaw. It is a sign of sensitivity. And sensitivity, deep down, is a form of wisdom. Chosen people feel the world intensely. They absorb what is in the air, perceive what has not been said, and intuit things that others ignore. This happens because their souls are more awake, more connected. But this connection, when not guided with awareness, can become a burden. And one of the first symptoms of this is racing thoughts. It's not that you think too much for no reason. It's that your mind is trying to process everything at once. The pain of others, the silences, your choices, the possible failures. And this excess, when not observed with care, turns into a cycle that wears you down inside. A fatigue that is not physical, but spreads throughout your being. Perhaps you have already felt this. Ending the day exhausted without understanding why. Realizing that you didn't do anything that intense, yet still feeling drained. This happens because the mind, when caught in cycles of worry, pressure, and perfectionism, consumes more energy than any task of the day. In this video, I want to show you that you are not alone. We will go through 10 signs that your thinking is going overboard, and invite you to see this with fresh eyes. You do not need to blame yourself for feeling too much, but you need to learn to care for your energy, as one would protect a rare flame. And if during this journey, you feel that this content truly understands you, I invite you to follow this channel. Here, you will not be treated as someone problematic for thinking too much. Here, you will be seen as someone profound, who just needs to learn to use this mind with more lightness. Your sensitivity is your strength. Let's transform this into peace together. 1. You keep reliving the past all the time. Chosen ones have deep hearts. They hold memories with details and relive feelings with intensity. Sometimes this depth turns into a mental cycle, where the mind insists on going back to the past. You find yourself reliving conversations, gestures, moments, even the small ones, as if you could still do something to change what has already happened. This constant return to the same thoughts may seem like a care for your own history, but in practice, it is a prison. It's like watching the same movie every day, hoping that the ending will change. You spend energy reviewing words, actions, and decisions that can no longer be modified. This consumes the present. The problem is not remembering the past. The problem is not being able to move on from it. When the mind clings to what has already been, it prevents you from being fully present in the now. It becomes difficult to feel pleasure, focus, or peace. Your attention is divided between what should have been and what still needs to be done. This mental pattern weakens your emotional field. You start to doubt yourself, lose confidence, and enter a rhythm of comparison, guilt, and frustration. And the more you try to control these memories, the more they return. It's an invisible loop. Recognizing this is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of awareness. The mind of the chosen is powerful, but it needs direction. Going back to the past is only worth it when it inspires forgiveness and learning, not when it distances you from the life that is still waiting to be lived. 2. You doubt the decisions you have already made. Chosen ones tend to overthink before making any decisions. They weigh the pros and cons, consider the emotional impact, put themselves in the other's shoes, and try to act with awareness. Even so, after choosing, doubt arises. A silent thought, almost imperceptible at first. What if I'm making a mistake? You may have chosen with a calm heart. You may have done the best you knew how with the resources you had at the moment. But days later, The mind starts to turn the subject over and over. You begin to doubt your own clarity, and this doubt transforms into anxiety, fear, and guilt. This habit of revisiting decisions weakens your confidence. It's as if you are always with one foot in the past and the other in the future. Never fully in the now, never sure of your own journey. This creates a sense of stagnation, as if you were always walking in circles. It's not that you decided wrong. It's that your mind, when overloaded, loses the ability to trust. And for those who feel too much like the chosen, this hurts twice as much. Because it comes with the idea that you should know better, as if it were your obligation to always get it right. The truth is that no one gets it right all the time. And the fact that you think so much already shows that you are trying to do your best. But living by revisiting what has already been decided only drains your energy. It prevents you from moving forward, from creating new experiences based on what you have learned. You do not need to go back all the time. You need to learn to embrace yourself even when you make mistakes. Your sensitivity is beautiful, but it needs to be in service of life, not against you. 3. You focus too much on the why and forget about the how. The chosen one is, by nature, someone who seeks meaning. They want to understand why things happen, why someone acted a certain way, why life brought that pain. This desire for answers is understandable, but when it turns into obsession, it traps you. Because not everything has a logical reason. Not everything will make sense right now. The mind, when it enters this cycle, starts to revolve around the same questions. Why did this happen to me? Logically, what did I do wrong? Logically, why did this person distance themselves? These inquiries do not move you forward. They keep you stuck, waiting for answers that may never come in the way you expect. And when you focus only on the reasons, you forget to look at what can be done. The how is the path to transformation. How can I react to this? Logically, how can I heal? Zrania, how can I move forward with more lightness? These questions bring movement. They bring the power of choice. They bring you back to real life. Getting stuck in the why steals your energy. It feeds guilt, resentment, and feelings of helplessness. And for those who already feel everything intensely, this type of pattern can completely drain emotional clarity. You do not need to understand everything to move forward. Sometimes the answer only appears after you start acting. The soul finds peace when you trade control for flow. When you choose to walk even without all the explanations. Because healing does not come from the reason. It comes from the direction. 4. You worry about things you cannot control. The chosen have a heart that connects with everything. If someone around is suffering, they feel it. If the future seems uncertain, they try to predict it. This arises from the desire to protect, to avoid pain. Not just their own, but also that of others. The problem is that this worry often exceeds the limits of what is healthy. You find yourself thinking about things that have already happened, or that have not even arrived yet. You worry about other people's decisions, about what time will bring, about what could go wrong even without any sign at all. The mind, in this state, keeps projecting situations beyond your control, and each scenario consumes a part of your energy. This mental pattern, however much it seems like care, is disguised weariness. It prevents you from living in the now. It transforms the present into a field of tension, where you are always preparing for a problem that may not even exist. Your body starts to respond with fatigue, insomnia, tightness in the chest, and you don't even understand why. Anxiety sneaks in quietly. It becomes routine. And when you realize it, you are trying to control the uncontrollable. But life does not bend to our fears. It asks for surrender. It demands trust. And the chosen, with all their sensitivity, need to learn that caring is different from carrying everything. You can love someone and still let go. You can wish for the best without trying to control the details. Your mission is not to control everything. It is to maintain your peace while everything moves. Letting go is not abandonment, it is wisdom. And when you understand this, you begin to breathe more lightly, even when not everything is under your command. 5. You create catastrophic stories in your head. The mind of the chosen one has a powerful imagination. It is sensitive, creative, deeply connected. However, in moments of uncertainty, this same mind can become a fertile ground for scenarios that never occurred. It only takes a message that takes too long to arrive, an unexpected silence, or a different gesture for the worst to begin to be imagined. In seconds, your mind constructs an entire movie. You see yourself being rejected, abandoned, failing, being misunderstood. The absence of a response turns into certainty of devaluation. A small change already becomes the beginning of a disaster. And your body feels as if all of that is really happening. This habit is more common than it seems, but it is also exhausting. You suffer for situations that do not even exist. Your heart races, your anxiety increases, your energy gets drained. And all of this is based on a hypothesis created by fear. The fear of losing, of not being enough, of being forgotten. The chosen feel everything with great intensity. And when something is not explained clearly, silence becomes open ground for painful interpretations. But living like this distances you from peace. You start to live more in what could happen than in what is actually happening now. It is important to remember that not every silence is rejection. Not every delay is disdain. Not every change is a threat. Sometimes the other person is just living their own confusion, and your mission is to not let your imagination take the place of reality. You do not need to believe every thought that arises. You can pause, breathe, choose to wait before judging. The mind is strong, but you are greater. And when you realize this, you begin to free yourself from the pain that you never needed to feel. 6. You get distracted easily and lose focus. The chosen carry a very intense mental sensitivity. They are always picking up signals, processing emotions, feeling the environment. And this, while being a gift, also brings a challenge. The difficulty of remaining fully present in the now. The mind is so active that anything becomes a reason to get lost in one's own thoughts. You could be reading something, talking to someone, or even trying to relax, but suddenly you find yourself elsewhere. Your body is present, but your attention is far away. Remembering what happened yesterday, predicting what might happen tomorrow, replaying conversations that no one else is having. And this creates a disconnection. This constant loss of focus does not come from laziness. It comes from an overloaded mind, a mind that tries to handle everything all the time. And because it is always active, it does not rest. As a result, you begin to forget simple things, delay tasks, avoid commitments. The day passes, and you feel like you haven't accomplished anything. This feeling of unproductiveness can bring guilt. You wonder why you cannot be more disciplined. But the root is not in a lack of willpower. It is in the way your mind has been shaped to feel everything, perceive everything, anticipate everything. But feeling too much without pause drains even the strongest spirit. Learning to return to the present is an exercise. It doesn't need to be perfect, just constant. Stop, breathe, look around. Remember that your place is here, now. The present moment is the only point where the mind aligns with the soul. It is in this moment that you can find focus, clarity, and direction. You do not need to force yourself. You need to allow yourself, because your presence when it is whole, is a rare strength, and the world needs it. 7. You believe that if you think more, you will find the perfect answer. The chosen carry a silent responsibility to always want to do what is right. Not out of external obligation, but from an internal sense of justice, ethics, and care. Therefore, before acting, they think, they assess, they feel, and they think a little more. In an attempt to get it right, they believe that more reflection will bring more clarity. However, at some point, this becomes a trap. The thought, which should be an ally, starts delaying action. The idea that if you reflect just a little more, you will find the ideal decision, the perfect word, or the foolproof plan. This paralyzes you. You begin to believe that you are still not ready, and for that reason, you do not start. This is mental perfectionism, a very common pattern among sensitive people who have been criticized too much or who cannot stand the idea of causing pain. It's as if you need 100% certainty to take the first step. But real life doesn't work that way. Almost nothing is absolutely clear from the beginning. The truth is that some answers only appear along the way. You only understand certain things when you begin. Movement brings clarity. Practice brings learning. And most of the time, it is the error that points out the next step, not isolated thought. Overthinking gives you a sense of control. But that control is illusory. While you stay stuck trying to predict everything, life keeps passing by. And with it, the opportunities to grow, experience, and create. The fear of making mistakes begins to weigh more than the desire to live. You do not need the perfect answer. You just need to take a step with intention. The rest, the road will show. Trust your heart more than the voice of fear, because your soul already knows what the mind is trying to control. 8. You end the day exhausted, having done almost nothing. Your body hasn't moved much. You didn't lift weights. You didn't run a marathon. You didn't do anything physically intense. But by the end of the day, you feel as if you faced an invisible battle. The exhaustion is real. The weight on your shoulders, the knot in your stomach, the tired mind, and all of this without a concrete reason. This is mental exhaustion. When thoughts take up so much space, the body responds as if it has actually lived through it. Worries, internal dialogues, scenarios that did not happen, guilt, repetitions. All of this generates muscle tension, disrupts sleep, affects breathing, and drains your vital energy. The chosen experience this more often than they realize, because they feel a lot. And because they feel, they think. And because they think, they try to understand, predict, fix. It's a cycle that seems noble, but little by little, it drains even the sparkle from their eyes. The weight of what is thought, even in silence, is greater than it seems. And when the day ends, there comes that feeling of frustration. I didn't do almost anything. But your mind has been occupied the whole time. And occupying the mind without rest is like leaving a machine running without a brake. After a while, it overheats. And when overheated, you can't even enjoy the good moments. This type of exhaustion is not visible to others. On the outside, everything seems fine. On the inside, there is a silent cry for help. A body that pleads for rest. A mind that screams for silence. A soul that wants to breathe without weight. You do not need to do more to feel productive. You need to think less, or rather, think with more lightness. Make space for creative emptiness, for healthy leisure, for the pause that rejuvenates. Because a heart that never rests cannot flourish, and yours deserves to flourish. 9. You spend a lot of time trying to find the ideal solution. The chosen tend to look for the best path. They are people who do not like to do anything halfway, who think about the details, who want to act with purpose. This is a quality. But when this quest for the best turns into an obsession with the ideal, something gets stuck. You start waiting for the perfect idea, the right moment, the foolproof plan. And in the meantime, time passes. The desire to get it right turns into paralysis. You wake up with the intention to act, but the mind traps you in analysis. What if it's not the best way? What if I'm not ready yet? These questions seem prudent, but they hide a deep fear of failing, of exposing yourself, of not being able to handle it. Over time, this waiting for security becomes a pattern. You start to delay everything, not out of laziness, but out of doubt. You do not start that project. You do not finish that plan. You do not take that step, because you are still not 100% sure it is the best. But the truth is that the best only appears with movement. Life does not require perfection. It asks for presence. And presence is to act even with a little fear. It is to allow yourself to adjust the path while walking. No plan is born ready. No idea comes complete. And what seems like a mistake is often just part of the construction. You do not need the ideal solution to start. You need to start for the solution to appear. What holds you back is not a lack of ability. It's an excess of expectation. Your mind is seeking security. But what strengthens you is the real step, even if small. And only by walking can you find your own rhythm. 10. You constantly criticize yourself for not being able to get out of this. One of the most silent pains of the chosen is blaming themselves for overthinking. They know their mind is racing, feel the emotional exhaustion, realize that this interferes in life, and yet they can't stop. And so, in addition to the fatigue, comes the self-criticism, comes the feeling of failure, of weakness, of incapacity. You start to ask yourself, why am I like this? Why can't I switch off? Why does everything affect me so much? And that internal voice, which should be welcoming, turns into one that accuses. The excessive thought becomes a reason for guilt, and guilt, in turn, generates even more anxiety. This cycle is cruel. The more you try to control the mind, the more it slips away. The more you judge yourself, the more fragile you feel. And no one can change what they are feeling if they are at war with their own thoughts. Change does not happen through force. It happens through kindness. The first step is to recognize you are not weak for feeling too much. You are not incapable for having intense thoughts. Your mind is merely a reflection of a sensitive soul that is still learning to cope with the internal world. And that's okay. This is more common than it seems, especially among awakened people. Instead of fighting against your thoughts, learn to observe them. Instead of demanding silence from yourself, embrace what is asking for attention. Your mind is not your enemy. It just needs direction. And this begins when you stop punishing yourself for something that is not a fault, but rather an invitation to self-knowledge. You deserve to be welcomed, including by yourself. And this starts now. If you have made it this far, it's because you carry a different soul. A soul that feels before it understands, that perceives more than others say, that thinks a lot not out of weakness, but out of connection. And if you think too much, it's because you are trying to care. For yourself, for others, for the world. But sometimes caring so much can be exhausting. The chosen live with their minds on fire. It is curious, sensitive, profound. It wants to find meaning in things, predict problems, avoid pain. But this same mind that tries to protect often traps. It gets lost in pasts that have already been, anguishes over futures that have not yet arrived, and forgets the now, which is the only time that exists. Thinking is not the problem. The problem arises when thought becomes a prison, when the day ends with fatigue without cause, when you do not act while waiting for the perfect idea, when you blame yourself for not being able to switch off. And this, over time, begins to hurt you on the inside, even if no one sees it on the outside. The good news is, there is a way out. And it begins when you stop fighting with your mind and start talking to it. When you realize that you are not alone within yourself. There is a space inside that is larger than the thoughts. This space is your consciousness. It is where your true strength resides. The chosen have a special mission, to transform pain into awareness. And this does not begin by solving everything, but by learning to breathe differently, observing your own cycles, and choosing with more lightness. It's not about silencing yourself from within. It's about speaking to yourself with more kindness. Your mind is alive, but you are the one who decides where it goes. You can guide, welcome, redirect. You can choose to act even without having all the answers. You can create without being fully ready. Because movement heals fear, and action weakens the cycle of doubt. Start small, but start with truth. You no longer need to blame yourself for thinking too much. You need to learn to rest within, to let go of the weight of self-criticism, to care for yourself with the same affection you offer to the world. Because if your mind has already taken you to the limit, perhaps it's time to let your soul lead. If this content touched something inside you, comment below with the phrase, "I am learning to think with lightness." This phrase is more than a comment. It is a commitment to yourself. It is a way of saying, I see my mind, but I will no longer let it hurt me. And by sharing this, you also show other sensitive souls that they are not alone. And if all of this makes sense to you, follow this channel. Here, your sensitivity is seen as power, your depth is valued, and your mind, even if intense, will always be treated with respect, care, and truth. Let's walk together with less weight and more presence. Yes, you feel a lot, but now it's time to live with more lightness.